We're going to be starting our new unit, which is conics. With conics, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be graphing different types of shapes. One of them is the parabola. Then we're going to move on to the circle, ellipse, and hyperbola. Then we're going to move on to piecewise functions, which is two functions in one different graph. For this first section, we're going to be focusing on graphing quadratics or parabolas. Now, before we get into graphing, what we're going to be doing is writing it in vertex form. How we write it in vertex form is by completing the square. Now, with completing the square, what we're going to be given is our equation. And the first thing that we have to do is we have to factor out an a. When we factor out an a, it's just going to be from our first two terms. And that's how we get the 2 right here. This next step is the most important. What we're going to do is we're going to find a new c value. How we find a new c value is we take our b value, we're going to divide it by 2 and square it. So we take the -4, divide it by 2 and square it, and we get 4. Now this is where it's a little tricky. We're adding a 4 on this side, but on this side it's an 8. And the reason that it's an 8 is because this 4 is actually in parentheses. And outside the parentheses is a 2. 2 times 4 is 8. So technically what we did was we added 8 on both sides. Next step is we're going to factor. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us 4, add up to -4, and that would be -2, -2. Since both the numbers are the same, we're writing -2 squared. Then our last step is the easiest. We get the y by itself. In this case, we subtract the 8, so we get -7. Now, with our example, looking at letter A, this one's a little bit easier because if you look, our A value is 1. So we don't have to do the first step. We're going to jump to the second step, which is finding our new c value. We're going to take the 4, we're going to divide it by 2, we're going to square it. 4 divided by 2 is 2, squared is 4. So I have y plus 4 equals x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus 1. So what did I end up doing is I added a 4 on both sides of the equation. Now my next step is I'm going to factor it. So I'm going to look at my trinomial, and I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together, give me 4, add up to 4, and that would be 2 and 2. If we're doing this correctly, these numbers are always going to be the same. So we have y plus 4 equals x plus 2 squared, because there's two of them. We have plus 1. The easiest step is getting the y by itself. We'll subtract the 4, and we get y is equal to x plus 2 squared minus 3. And that right there is our answer. Now, looking at letter B, it's a little bit more complicated because we have a leading coefficient of 3. Now, we're just going to be looking at the first two terms, and we're going to factor out a 3. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to find our new c value. So we're going to take our -2, we're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to square. -2 divided by 2 is -1, squared is 1. Now, that 1 we're going to add on both sides. But if you're looking closely, on the right-hand side, I added a 1, but on the left-hand side, I added a 3. And the reason that I added a 3 is because this 1 is inside parentheses. And outside the parentheses is a 3. 3 times 1 is 3. And that's why I added a 3 on this side. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor it. So I'm looking for two numbers. Multiply together, give me 1. Add up to -2. And if I'm doing it correctly, it's always going to be the same. So I have the y plus the 3 equals 3x minus 1 squared minus 8. Now for the easiest step, we get the y by itself. And in this case, we're going to subtract 3. So my final answer is going to be y equals 3x minus 1 squared minus